everybody. It's author Tonya Duncan Ellis in the Sophie Washington series with another episode of my author interview show, Write This. I'm excited today as usual because I have another great guest who will be joining us, Samantha M. Clark. Samantha is a middle grade fantasy author who I had the pleasure of meeting during SCBWI, Society of Children's Books, Writers and Illustrators meeting, where she gave an overview of plot and all kinds of great writing tips. So I know we'll have a lot to learn from her today and can't wait to talk to her and pick her brain on writing craft and to learn about her author journey. Thank you guys so much for joining me again for another episode of the show. And we're going to have all kinds of other cool guests coming up in the next few weeks. So can't wait to share those with you. And I see that we have some people coming in, and it's good to see you all. Welcome. Thank you for stopping in. We're waiting on Samantha to come and join us. And another fun fact to share about how I got to know her. She is a regional advisor for the Society of Children's Books, Writers and Illustrators in Austin, the Austin chapter. And I went to their virtual conference in the spring and had so much fun. And the most interesting thing about it was that one of the guests had a rooster in. So you could see a rooster. They had a rooster in their house, and that was in the screen. And Austin, if you're not familiar with the city, has a motto, "Keep Austin Weird." So I felt like that conference really lived up to the name because it was really something to see. So we're waiting for her to join. She is new to Instagram Live, so hopefully she won't have any trouble signing on. She knows that we're going to be here. But while we're here waiting, if you have any questions, pop them in the chat or in the comments, and I'll be sure to pose those to her and try to answer them if you have any questions of me. And let's see, she's not on here, so I'm going to send her an invite too, just in case she doesn't know what to do. Because we went through this earlier today, and it's something new. Okay. Okay, so I sent her an invitation to join. Okay, and she joined. Hey, how are you?
Hi.
How you doing? So you were able to get on every time. I'm like, oh, I hope they can come. It's so weird being out here virtual, isn't it?
I know it is. It's very, very strange.
Yeah.
And this is my first IG Live, so I'm thrilled.
Right.
I'm really excited to be here with you.
To have you. And I was just so happy to make your acquaintance. I was saying before you came on, I loved you all's conference so much. The Austin SCBWI Writers Conference. I had so much fun when I came.
Good.
Yeah, because you all are so warm and welcoming.
Well, of course.
Yeah, of course.
We try. And you did really well at the last conference because you won our mentorship.
I know. I was so happy. And it was like a total surprise and shock because I think I wasn't tuning on when that was announced. And so when they told me, I was like, what in the world? I was just so happy. So it was yes.
It was really wonderful. Really, really wonderful.
And you won that as well, didn't you? You're a winner of that same award.
Well, I won it for SCBWI Houston, which is your local chapter.
Okay.
I won it when we used to live in Houston before we moved to Austin. And I won it when I was there, and I had the chance to mentor with Kathy Appelt, which was amazing.
Oh.
And we actually worked on this book, The Boy, the Boat, and the Beast, long before I had an agent and long before it actually became a book.
That is fabulous. And she is the author of Because of Winn-Dixie.
No. Oh. Kathy is the author of the Underneath and the True Blue, Tales of Sugar Swamp, the Scouts of Sugar Swamp. I think I'm getting that right. It's a long title.
Right. And the Underneath, my kids read that and loved that book. So that's so cool.
It's a brilliant book. It's so beautiful. She's such an amazing writer. She really is. Yeah.
Yeah, that is fabulous. Well, can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about your background? You have such an interesting background, and you're lived everywhere from what I've seen in your website.
I have. I lived all over. Yeah. I was actually born in South America. I mean, yeah, in South America. So my voice, my accent might sound a bit funny because it's all over the place. So I was born in South America in Guyana, and that actually inspired my one of the books that came out this year, Arrow. And so I was born in South America in Guyana, and then we had to leave because of political issues. We had to leave when I was one. We moved to England when I was one, but then we went back to Guyana years later, which was amazing. And that's when I really remember it more. And then we lived in England until I was 10. Then we moved to Jamaica, and we lived in Jamaica for 2 years. And then then we moved to the Cayman Islands, and my parents actually still live in the Cayman Islands.
Oh, that is so cool. Do you go there for
Yeah,
Christmas? Or do
quite often. Yeah, we were actually there for Christmas and New Year's 2019, right
you,
before the pandemic hit. So
oh,
I was really glad that we got to go, right before everything kind of shut down, because the island completely shut down. They shut their borders, they shut everything off. And so it was great that we got to be there for that time. We got to see a bunch of family there, which was really nice. Yeah.
right. That's a great blessing that you got to do that, right? Actually got to do that too. We had a big gathering of all our relatives right like weeks before the pandemic hit. So I was so happy
Wow.
that we did that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good to be able to do that.
Well, your
It
rich
is.
background, I'm sure, does that inspire your writing? I'm sure it does.
It definitely does. I mean, the Boy, the Boat, and the Beast, is set on a beach, and there's a lot of stuff from Cayman that's in here. He eats sea grape tree. He eats sea grapes, which are sea grape trees grow wild in Cayman, so they're all over the place. And it has like Iron Shore in here, which is from Cayman. And then for Arrow, this book is actually dedicated to my family. My It says, you can read, for my DeFreitas and Gomes family who made Guyana their home. Because my original family is Portuguese on both sides, my mom's side and my dad's side. And then they moved to Guyana. Basically the same, reason why people moved to the New World. My family moved to Guyana to make money, to have a life, and, build up a life, I guess. So they moved to Guyana, and my parents actually grew up there. My parents were both born in England, but then they grew up in Guyana, and I, wasn't able to grow up there because of all of the political issues, but it was great to be able to go there when I was 10 and like see all the places that my parents had grown up with. My parents grew up with the Amazon was basically kind of in their back garden. My mom had a very large lizard for a long time as a pet that my dad had given her when they were courting.
Very romantic.
Very romantic, yes. And so it definitely inspires my writing or my stories and the kinds of stories that I like to write. But also, I didn't have, growing up on a small island, as I did in Jamaica and Cayman, I didn't have any kind of, there was no social media back then, and I didn't have access to authors. And I definitely didn't think that I could ever become an author. I thought the names on books were like, some magical people who lived in a cloud somewhere. And it wasn't until I went to college in Tampa that I met an author. One of my professors was an author. And I thought, wow, I wonder if maybe I could be one. But by then, I had already been a journalist. I was studying journalism. So I stayed on that track for a long time. But I always wanted to write fiction. And then I met my husband in college, and we moved out to Los Angeles. And then in Los Angeles, we moved there for his work. But while we were there, I was like, well, you know, when in Rome, I wanted to write fiction. I wanted to write novels. I thought when in Rome, you know, I'm in LA, I might as well try my hand at screenwriting. So then I learned how to write screenplays. Ultimately, I decided that novels was really what I wanted to write. But learning this to write screenplays and not my background in journalism, I think did help because I don't have a creative writing degree.
Right.
But those, you know, those were different types of writing. So I think all of those kind of things kind of feed into the type of writing that I do now.
Right. That's
Yeah.
really interesting. And as you're saying, I think now that we have social media, because I also had worked in journalism, now you see authors and people writing books, but back then you didn't really, you may have wanted to write, but you just didn't see that as a path you could take.
Right.
So,
And don't you feel like that journalism kind of, do you feel the same way? Like it kind of feeds into your writing? Because writing fiction is very different from writing just straight realistic things. You get to make up stuff now where you can't do that as a journalist.
right.
But it does kind of, you know, do you feel like that too? Like it feeds into the way you write and how you research, things like that?
Yes, definitely. And I write more realistic fiction because you write more fantasy. So it definitely
Yeah.
does feed into what I do and when I'm researching and how I look at things. So,
Yeah.
and I used to
And
love feature writing. So those kind of
yes.
things I'd write were kind of the same type things.
Exactly. That was always my favorite. I always wanted to be, before I realized that I could actually try to be a novelist, I always wanted to work on magazine writing because that was
Right.
mainly features.
And that I
And
actually worked in a magazine here in it was Katie magazine. So yeah.
oh, yeah.
So I wrote those because yeah, when you're working in the newsroom, they're saying, well, the pay's not in that. You need to be in the hot
Right.
news stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And writing features was so much more fun for me because then you got to actually tell more of a story. You got
Mhm.
to describe things much more. Whereas with straight news, it's just, you know, get to
Right.
the point much faster. But
Right.
yeah, with features, you can kind of be a bit more creative. So I really love that. And this one, which also came out this year, American Horror Stories Hollywood, this is actually my first contemporary book.
Right. I want to
And
read that. That looks so cute. I love that.
thanks. It is fun. I like it. It's part of a series, and this is book two, about, you know, girls and their horses. It came out from Penguin Workshop, but it was super fun to write. Really, really fun. But I used that same you know, kind of that same journalism writing that one, you know. But even with writing the more fantasy ones like Arrow, that research that, you know, we learned as journalists to do really helped with
Right.
writing, you know, because you have to do so much. I had to do so much research for Arrow, even for The Boy, the Boat, and the Beast too, but especially for Arrow because it's set in a rainforest and it's all about deforestation and
Now tell us a
it's
little bit
actually set
about
in the
this
future.
story. Tell the story. Don't give away
Okay.
the ending.
Don't give away the end.
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep like hiking myself up because I've got my phone like propped up on a book, but I feel very short down here. Um, so Arrow it's set in the future, in the not so distant future, but hopefully a future that will never happen, where the you know, in the Amazon, and still it's not set in the Amazon, but it's set in a rainforest. And in the Amazon and a lot of the rainforests around the world, there are still indigenous tribes that live in the rainforest and they protect the rainforest. They know the trees. They know the spirits of the trees. They know everything about the rainforest, about the trees, about the forest, how they communicate. They know everything about it. And one of the things that I discovered, you know, I knew, but discovered more when I was doing my research for this book, is that especially in the Amazon, but also in other areas, there are kind of big money, you know, corporations, even governments who try to get the indigenous people out so that they can then use the land. They think that if they take away they tear down the trees, they can use that great soil in the Amazon to grow better crops. What they don't understand is those trees are creating that amazing soil that is in there. So once they take out the trees, then the soil dies, and the indigenous people living in the tribes living in the rainforest in Guyana, we call them the Amerindians in Guyana. And the Amerindians, they protect the rainforest. And so one of the things that I was looking at when I was researching, when I had the first idea for the story, it was literally, I was vacuuming and I had this idea of a boy with one hand who lived in a tree. And that was it. I had no idea where the story was going to go from there. But I, like everything, when I have an idea for just a little bit of a story, then I start asking questions. That's the seed of my story. I start growing the story from there by figuring out the roots of the story and what has happened before to get to this this character where he is at this point. So I started doing research and I started to try and figure out, you know, he's in a tree. So why is he in a tree? And so as I was researching, you know, trees and forests, and that's when I came up with, you know, the rainforest. And I remembered when I went into the Amazon when I was 10 in Guyana, I remembered about the Amerindians, and I did more research into them and how they protect the forest, and then the threats that they are constantly facing, not only in the Amazon, but in rainforests around the world. And so then what I kind of came up with for the story was, I said it then in the future, where in a future that I really, 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 really hope that never happens, because for this rainforest, the indigenous people, what the guardian tree, the story is told by the guardian tree, who's here on the back cover, and the indigenous people, who the guardian tree calls them the forest dwellers, and they've all been pushed out. So when that happened, the guardian tree had to protect the rainforest, and by doing that, used the earth from the magic from the earth and hid as much of the rainforest as possible. The only human that has been allowed in is Arrow, who's right here. And he has a limb difference, and he's grown up, this only human in the forest, and his best friend is Curly, because of course, if you're the only human in a forest, your best friend would be a really cute, adorable monkey. And so he's the only human in this forest, but then basically when the story kind of starts is the magic has, what they call the anima, has been fading, and the curtain around the forest has been tearing, and the book begins with a plane crash. And that's when they know that, you know, they have to kind of fix the anima really fast, but they can't figure out how to fix it. And people from the dry, arid outside world, because once you take away the rainforest, and we're dealing with that right now with climate change, you know, we've been seeing it. And once you take away the rainforest, all of that, you know, that our world will get drier and drier and drier.
Oh my, this is scary. Oh my goodness.
So for this story, the outside world is this dry, arid world. I kind of liken it to Mad Max meets the Jungle Book, with a bunch of Fern Gully thrown in.
Like books like 1984 or something that later we're like, oh, we read Arrow. And it was.
Oh yes. I hope this book never happens. Never really becomes, you know, a true book. Another part of my research for this was these videos that I saw with Suzanne Simard, who studies trees. She's amazing, and she discovered how trees talk to each other, and they do. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And so I used that in the book too. So,
you're so imaginative. So this is, and I feel like this will get children and other readers, adult readers, anyone reading, just thinking about our impact on the environment.
Yes, exactly. I hope so. I really do hope so, because it is about, you know, our impact on the environment. The environment, you know, does its thing. Mother Nature has its, you know, they do their thing all the time. But you know, the more we cut away trees, the less good our air is. They've they've shown that half of the medicines that we take have been discovered in the Amazon.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I mean, if we don't have, if we don't protect these things, we're not going to have much of a future ourselves.
But you're right. Like, I remember one time I visited Jamaica years ago, and I got bit up by mosquitoes, and some people in the market gave me aloe leaf.
Yeah.
And that just
Yeah.
soothed it. Yeah.
Yeah, aloe's great for mosquitoes. Yeah. What part of Jamaica were you in?
It was, I wasn't in Negril. I think Kingston.
Kingston? That's where we lived. We lived in Kingston.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I went
I loved Montego Bay.
Yeah, it was Montego Bay, and then we did a day trip. And
yeah.
Stayed in Montego Bay. I was there just a week. Yeah, that was really nice.
Yeah, Jamaica's a beautiful country. Beautiful island.
Yeah. And it has the British connection, I guess.
It used to be a British colony, but they've got their own independence now. I think from like the 60s. Okay. Guyana was a British country as well for a while. The Cayman Islands is still British. They still have their British ties, but they're a colony. They have their own government now, but they still have British ties. Anytime there's like wars or anything coming up, then Cayman gets a Navy ship, a British Navy ship, they're guarding it.
Oh, okay. Now let's talk quickly about your process. Like, you have so many ideas. How do you harness all this? What is your process like?
It's really changed actually over the last few books. When I started out, and so for The Boy, the Boat, and the Beast, this was the first novel that I wrote. And by the time I got my agent, I had written another 3 or 4 novels, which haven't come out yet, maybe one day. Mm-hmm. And, for this, I was really just pantsing it. I didn't really know what I was doing. I had gotten the idea for the story when I was actually living in Houston. Right. And I was living down near South Shore, and I was walking my dog near the lake right there, near NASA, because my husband was working for a NASA contractor at the time. Okay. So we're living down there, and I got the idea, but I had no idea, like, to continue it, like what more to do with the idea. So I literally would be writing the story and just be like, okay, I have no idea what to do next. He just starts walking in this direction. We'll see what happens. And that was how I wrote the entire first draft. And when I got to the end, and the book is about a boy who wakes up on a beach. He doesn't know who he is, where he is, or how he got there. All he knows is that every time he leaves, everything turns scary. So, I'm just, I'm following this kid who has no memory of anything. And when I got to the end of the book, and I didn't really know what had happened to him either, but when I got to the end of the first draft, I wrote the last scene of the book. And that last scene is actually pretty much identical to what is in the book now. And it was funny because I remember writing this book, and in my head, I'm thinking, oh, that's what the story's about. Right. So it was really just a discovery, how to figure everything out. Then after the book came out, before the book came out, the next book that I wrote, I discovered these videos on YouTube by Dan Wells. And it's basically, and I've recommended these videos so many times to writers, these videos changed my life as far as plotting goes. Okay. And they helped me enormously because I find it really hard to see the entire story in my head. So quite often I'll be writing and I'll get lost. Like, I don't really know where I am, where I'm going. And that was really hard for me with this book. Mm-hmm. But then when I wrote the following book, which is actually, it was a YA book that I wrote after this. And when I was writing that, I found these Dan Wells videos. And if you can find them on YouTube, it's Dan Wells Story Structure. There's lots of other videos that talk about these videos, but I say go to the source and then watch the others. But if you can see the Dan Wells one, it's really good. It's 5 videos. It's basically one seminar that he did. He's an author as well. He's a horror writer, and he did this one seminar on story structure, and they broke it up into these 5 videos, and they're fantastic. And when I got to the end, the last part, my mind was just like blown. I was like, oh, I see how everything kind of fits in and how it works. And it was just 7 points along that plot. But he also helped you figure out not only how to plot out those 7 points for the main story, but you could plot them out for character arcs. And then you could like kind of put them together as well. So I'll leave you guys to watch the videos.
Yeah,
but those videos helped me enormously to know better, like where I was going with the story, how it all kind of played together, you know?
Right.
And then, so I used that for a long time. And what I would do was I would start to write. I would, you know, come up with the initial idea, start asking questions, build up a backstory so that I knew kind of what was happening and where I was going, kind of figure out, I always have to know what my end is, even if it changes. I have to know an end for the story. Whereas The Boy, the Boy, the Beast, I didn't really know. I knew that he would figure out what happened to him, but other than that, had no idea, you know, what was actually going to happen. So then, what I would generally do is I would then start writing, and as I'm writing, I would kind of be discovering, and I would get to a point where I'd kind of get a bit lost, and then I'd go back and I'd look at the plot, the 7-point structure that I had done, see where I had varied, see if where I'd varied was a better way. I would rework that 7-point structure with the new things that I've learned in my writing. Then I would basically do a save as and go back to the beginning, and I would revise up until that point, and then I would start writing again. And what I generally found was that I was getting ahead of myself in the story too much. So that was kind of how my process went for a while until Arrow. With Arrow, it was so hard to figure out how to tell this story. And I actually was talking on the phone with a friend of mine, another friend of mine who lives in Houston. And she was talking about Save the Cat. And I'd heard about Save the Cat, but I'd never really used it. And I was like, you know, at this point, I'll try anything. So I downloaded the book, I read it, and then I plotted it out. And there's some things that I don't like about Save the Cat that, for me personally, that don't completely work. I think there's a lot of gaps. But the funny thing was putting together the Dan Wells story structure and the Save the Cat kind of digs in just a little bit more. Those two things did help me finally to open up Arrow and figure out how to tell it. Right. So what I did with Arrow was I wrote the first half of this book 7 different times. Oh. And that was when I finally figured out, I had done like the Save the Cat, and I'd finally figured out how to tell the story properly. Right. And I had enough research by then. I had, you know, done enough thinking by then. So then I was able to pretty much write to the end of the book. And then it was just a quick read through, and I sent it off to my agent. She had lots of notes. By then, Simon & Schuster, my publisher, knew that I was working on this book, and they had seen an outline, a very early outline that did change. And so they were asking for it. They were asking to see, you know, they were like, is she finished? So my agent had lots of notes, but she said, but I think it's good enough. Let's just send it off to your editor. So she did, and they bought it, which was amazing.
That's so
but then, and this is, I think, the same with many writers. I'm sure you've had this too, how your process just keeps changing and changing. So then I had the opportunity to write this book as part of the American Horse Tales series, but I auditioned for this because it's a part of a series, and they had different authors writing the different books in the series. There were 2 that came out June 29th. This was book one and book two, and this one's book two. There's two more that are coming out in 5 days. And so because I was auditioning, I had to write the first 3 chapters and do a full outline. So I really had to know what was happening for the whole book with that. So my experience with Arrow and using Save the Cat and the Dan Wells 7-point story structure, all of that helped me write a better outline for this book. And that's actually, you know, kind of what I've been doing ever since then. So now I've learned, you know, my process has gotten much more of an outliner. I still have lots of things that I'm discovering along the way. I'm now working on the Gemstone Dragons series with Bloomsbury.
Do you
I'm
have
working
a cover for that one? Or do you have?
I do. Actually, I was just working on my website. And
so cute too. I love it.
I can show you.
Let me see.
Can you see that?
No, you need to go lower. We're too lower. Okay, yeah, we can kind of see it. That is so adorable to me.
Kind of see it?
Yeah, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, let me see if I can. I don't know how to turn around my camera with this, but yeah. So those are the, if you can see it, those are the Gemstone Dragon series.
For little kids.
And they're so cute. They're so fun. But I'm working on book 3 right now, and it's all been outlined. And I'm still, even with an outline, I'm still like trying to figure out, how do I do this part and how do I do that part? Because the outline's still really, really loose. But yeah, so my process, you know, make a long story short, my process has really changed over all these different books.
You know, it's your creativity. So it's not going to be a recipe for each one. It's going to be different probably for each project.
Right. Exactly. It really is. And you're still finding different ways to tell the story. And even when, like, with this book, it was pretty, the outline, you know, was pretty set. You know, once I started writing the story, it didn't really change that much. But I was still having fun, you know, because I hadn't figured out, you know, the descriptions or the kind of food that would go in, or the movements or the dialogue, or the characters weren't fully absorbed there. You know, I knew that Juniper was going to sneak into the horse trailer when her dad takes Abel to go on this audition for the TV show, but I didn't know how she was going to do that. So, you know, I hear a lot of writers who say, you know, I don't really want to outline because then I get bored. For me, I might know the whole story by that time, even though, you know, if I've outlined a story, but I don't know all the details. And there's still so much fun for me in the details and figuring out, you know, all the little details and the descriptions and all of that part.
Because I think of it kind of like you're drawing just a picture with pencil, and then you go back in and paint in all the colors and make all the fun parts.
Right. I love that analogy. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, exactly.
Because I get my story, then I go back and just add all these other little things in there to make it more fun.
Yeah, yeah. Do you outline as well when you're doing it, or are you more of a pantser? Because you've got loads of books in your series.
I'm a pantser, well, with new projects, but I'm going to get on the Dan Wells right after we get off this. Because the Sophie Washington series, since it's a series, I know everybody, I know my characters, and I just introduce 1 or 2 new characters per book. So I make kind of chapter headings, and that's like a loose outline.
Right.
For those. But I'm working on some new projects, and it takes me so long, you're right, because I need to have some kind of structure. So I'm going to get, I've heard of Save the Cat when they talk about it at the SCBWI. I get that, because it's harder when you're just floundering with all these thoughts coming around.
Right. Yes. That's how it is for me. It's especially the bigger the story is, I find it really hard to keep it all, you know, in my head. and
Yeah.
figure out where I am and how every scene fits in. And of course, you can do a lot of that with revision. And I move stuff around. I mean, with Beast, I moved so many things around with the story because I
Mm-hmm.
found, it's a spooky story. And I
Ooh.
found that there's one scene that is now near the end of the book, but it was pretty early in the book originally, and I was reading it through one revision and going, man, this is a scary part. This should be right at the end,
Right.
but when you're and revision is great for that too.
Mm-hmm.
But I do find that having some of that outlining, now sorting out some of those things, it does help me to tell the story easier in my head, but also it helps me to tell the story faster. It helps me to write and
Right.
work on projects faster.
Right. Because then I'm going back and looking, reworking. So you don't have to do that. So I do need to do that. So that's wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you
I
for that.
still I still have to do lots of revision, but I don't do as much revision, and I'm not usually doing like really big revision at that point
Right.
with this outlining.
Right.
Whereas with my older stories, I would do major, big, major, revisions. But I don't really have to revise, the big plot points in it as much anymore.
Yes, I see. I see. Well, Samantha,
Yeah.
this has just been a treasure trove of information for all of us. And your book sounds so exciting. And I have a copy of
Thank you.
Arrow. So I've got to, this holiday season, sit down and read that one. And I really want the one with the horse. The Hollywood.
Yeah, it's super cute.
Yeah.
It's fun. The whole series. The first book is called Dust Bowl, the Dust Bowl, and
Oh,
you
okay.
can just see the cover on the back.
Okay.
And it's actually a historical, and it's a really great series. It's just, girls and the horses, and they're all contemporary. Well, they're all non-fantastical,
Right.
but the first book is historical.
Right. So they're realistic. Yes.
Yeah, the
What?
ones that are coming up on November 15th, I'm pretty sure it's November 15th that the next two books in the series are coming out. And they look so good too. There's one that's set in Hawaii
Oh.
about a rodeo,
Ooh.
and I'm blanking on the other one. I'm blanking. And then there's another book that's coming out, a fifth book that's coming out next year as well.
Mhm.
But it's a really fun series. It
Yeah.
was my first fiction contemporary or non-fantastical that I wrote,
Hmm.
and I wasn't sure if I if I would be able to do it, but it was fun.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of excitement you've added in that. So I want to check that one
Yeah,
too. Yeah.
I hope you enjoy them.
Yes, yeah. Well, Samantha, I want to thank you for your time and thank you for all these tips that you've shared because I know I'll be taking advantage of them. And
Good. You're welcome. I can talk about craft stuff, like like
yeah,
for hours. I love talking about craft stuff.
I
It's
loved
so
your
much fun.
other talk. I still remember it because you talked about it was like baking and cake and you had all the elements in. So that was
That's
really
right.
good.
That's right. Yeah, I'm actually teaching for the Writers League of Texas in December, and I'm blanking on the date, but I'll be posting about it soon. But I'm teaching writing the middle grade and young adult novel for the Writers League of Texas in December, so that's going to be fun.
Okay, well,
I've taught it before, and I talk about the plotting and stuff as well in that too, but we go a lot deeper in it. We talk about character and developing and development and developing the ideas into stories. It's fun.
so people can check that out on your Instagram page or the information of when that'll be taking place.
Yes,
Okay.
I need to post it. I've been slow on social lately because I'm on deadline with these Gemstone Dragon books. So if you don't see me, that's why.
Right.
I do miss it, but I'll post it on my website too. And Writers League of Texas, I think it's writersleague.org is their website, and it's in their calendar.
And what
Mostly,
is your website? What's your website?
I'm at samantham.clark.com.
Okay. And you're on Instagram where?
I'm on Instagram, Samantha M. Clark Books, I think.
Okay. Yes.
And then Facebook is Samantha M. Clark Author, I think. And then Twitter, which is where I am mostly because it's the quickest. And
Mhm.
the easiest one is Sam Clark Writes.
Right. Okay. So, and I'll put links to these on the notes, show notes when we get done.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. Awesome.
Okay, well, thank you for coming and talking and sharing your knowledge, Samantha. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time for the next episode of Write This.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Tonya.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.